Hello all, myself Manoj Sharma. Welcome to TechnoSage. So this is a course on Advanced Excel where I'll be covering the topics on Advanced Excel, some of the very important key topics regarding the Advanced Excel. So the topic that will be covered under this video would be the following, where we'll be starting from the very basic concepts like text to column, concatenate function, and then we will move on to time and date calculations where some of the people face issues while using the date value function. We also solved that. Then we'll come to 3D formulas. We'll also talk about the XLOOKUP and how we can use nested XLOOKUP. We'll talk about the chart and chart types. And we will also talk about converting the numbers to words. So this is a list of 21 sections under this video. And under each section, we have explained the topic with the real-time examples. Please follow this video till the last and you will be able to learn the very important key concepts regarding the advanced Excel. So let's get started. So depending upon the way your data is arranged, you can split the cell content based on the delimiter, such as space or a character. A character could be comma, period, semicolon, or you can split it based upon the specific column break location within the data. So now see, the content of this cell contains the first name and the last name separated with the delimiter as space. So you can split the content of this cell, and the content of the cell can be converted to columns. For example, if you want the first name to be in the column number A, the column number B can contain the last name, and this again the number can be shifted to column number C. So this we can achieve with the help of text to column. So for this, what we need to do is we need to insert a new column. Why new column? Because if we are not introducing a new column and we are converting text to column concept, what happens is the next data will be overridden. So first we need to insert the new column. Now you can see that the new column has been inserted. So when I apply the text to column concept, the last name will come over here and the phone number will retain as it is. Clear formatting, I'll clear the formatting. And now select the entire column, go to this data section, and under the data section, there is something called text to column. Just click onto this option, text to columns. There is an option for delimited or the fixed width. We will select the delimited because we want to split the first name and the last name based upon the delimiter as space. Hit next, and there you can see the option to select the delimiters. So based upon the data of your sheet, you can select the delimiters. For me, the delimiter is space, but let's suppose your data has the delimiter as tab, or your data you want to split based upon the semicolon or comma, you can select the desired delimiter. So currently I'm selecting the space here. Click on to next. Here it is asking me to select the column data format. So by default, the general is selected. I'll keep everything by default. So based upon your requirement, you can select the text, you can select the date, and you can just verify that the headers are getting changed over here. So I just click on to general and click on to finish. So as and when I hit finish, you can see that the text was actually converted to column. So this is basically the concept for text to column, where your text is getting converted into column based upon the delimiter that you are choosing. Here we have chosen the space. So based upon the space, our first name and the last name is split up into different cells or into different hold together a column, because we have selected the entire column over here, the entire A. Concatenate function joins two or more text string together to form one string. Let's take an example. Let's suppose we have a customer first name and the customer last name. We want to join these two strings together to form a complete name. For this, the concatenate function comes handy. Let's see how. Now on the screen, as you can see, I want to have the first name and the last name in the complete form, or rather combined. So how we can achieve this? I'll put equals and will put concatenate. You can see down below the compatibility functions are also coming. We have to use the same one. Now put the bracket, and under the bracket choose the first name, comma, and the last name, and hit enter. As on the screen you can see that the concatenate function joins the two string, but when you are joining the two string, Excel does not insert a space or any punctuation between the two combined strings. So we must insert a space when we are using the concatenate function. So we will edit this and we'll put the space in between, and again we'll put a comma, hit enter, and this time you can see that one space is added. So we are basically concatenating three strings. One is the first name, second is the space, and third is the last name. And now I'll drag to apply the formula to all the other cells. And here you can see that I'm getting the complete name of the customers using the first name and the last name. So this was all about the concatenate function. I'll just clear up everything here. Now we will achieve the similar thing using the AND symbol. How? On the cell, put equals, select the first name, put and since we have to provide the space in between the first name and the last name, so we will insert the space. We will put the space. I'll again put the and I'll select the last name over here and hit enter. And you can see by using this and symbol, I'm able to achieve the concatenation. I'll scroll this down and everything will be applicable to other cells as well. So concatenation can be achieved using the concatenate function or using the and symbol. Before moving on to write function with concatenation, let's talk about what write function is all about. So I'll tell you with the example. So let's suppose we have the social security numbers over here and I just want to have the last 4 digits of the social security number to be printed. So what I need to do is I'll just give equals, press write, select the social security number cell, which is the E7, close the bracket, hit enter. So you can see since I have not selected anything, it just gave me the last digit by default. If I just give comma and will give 4, it will give me the last 4 digits. Similarly, there is a function called as left. So what it will do, it will move from the left side. So this is the right side and this is the left side. So left function will move from the left side and will pick the digits from the left side. So for example, if I select this cell, comma, and if I select 3, so the printed digit would be 781. So this is how the right function and the left function works in order to pick the value either from the right side or from the left side. So now let's talk about the right function with concatenation. So the right function with concatenation enables you to take sensitive data, example credit card numbers, social security number, etc., and replace a portion of it. If you're handling data with sensitive personal identification information, this process will give you the ability to protect that information. How? So this is the social security number. I just want the last 4 digits to be printed on the screen and other digits or other information to be hidden. So how normally you see the social security numbers on the websites? It will be in the format as some values would be hidden and last digits would be visible for your validation. So this format we also want for our social security number, and for this the right function with concatenation comes handy. Now let's do this. Put equals, and since I need to hide the 4 digits over here, I just give them X. So this is basically the symbolic representation of the hidden data. I'll just give the AND operator, which is basically the concatenation operator, and will do the concatenation with the write function. So here the write function will be, I'll select this E7 cell, comma, and I just want to 4 digits. I'll just give the 4 digits and hit enter. You can now see that my first 5 digits are hidden and only the last 4 digits are visible. I'll drag the formula for other cells as well, and you can see that my social security number is in the hidden mode or is in the protected mode. Now, if let's suppose I'm trying to delete the social security number from here, this will also get deleted since this is just the formula and it is pointing to the real values. So all I need to do is I'll just copy this cell, the entire cells. I'll copy the cells and I'll go to the paste option. Under the paste option, there is something called paste values. So since this is copied version, I'll have to paste over here. I'll just select the cell and onto the cell, I'll go to the paste option and will do the paste values. So this is just the values and not the references. Now if I delete this social security numbers. This will get impacted, but this will remain intact. I'll just copy from here and I will paste onto the real world information, and my all the data would be hidden. I can do one more thing. I can have the social security number in a hidden page. From there I can create this format, this hidden format, and can use it in my sheet, in my real sheet, which is customer centric sheet. So in this way, the right function with concatenation comes into picture. So in this way, the right function with concatenation is actually very helpful. So before we talk about the absolute cell references, let's understand the example on the screen. So as you can see, there is a section called cost. This is the cost of an item. Next is the shipping cost of the item. And then we have the total cost with including the tax. For inclusion of the tax, we have the tax rate, which is 8.25%, and obviously the tax multiplier would be 1.0825. So in order to find the total, we have to multiply the cost with the tax multiplier and then have to add the shipping cost. So this will give us the total cost with tax. So let's calculate the total for the first item. Put equals, select the cost, multiply it with the tax multiplier, and then add the shipping cost. Hit enter. And now you have the total cost with including the tax. So now if we want to find the total cost for all the other items, what usually we do? We put the formula for the first cell and we drag to apply the formula to the other cells as well, which is called as the relative cell references. Why? Because if you drag, this will also drag and this will also drag. So the formula will be dragged based upon the relative cell references. Let's see how. If I'm dragging it down, you see the value is mismatched. There is a wrong value. Why there is a wrong value? For first one, the content was tax multiplier, cost and shipping cost for A7 and B7. The next one, obviously A8 and B8, but the tax multiplier also shifted because this is the relative cell reference. Now for the third one, this got shifted to A9 and B9. Similarly, the tax multiplier also shifted to B6. Why? Because the relative cell references. Why this is a problem? Because cost and shipping cost should be relative, and as and when we are moving down with this total cost, these should also be moving down. But the tax multiplier in this case is the constant. Tax multiplier should always be pointing to this particular value, which is the B4, and should not be shifting with respect to the relative cell references. So in order to fix this, we will use the concept of absolute cell references. So the absolute cell references comes handy when copying a formula. You may want one or more cell references to remain unchanged. So absolute cell references preserve the exact cell address in a formula. So for this, what you need to do is, you need to, since this B4 is pointing to the tax multiplier, in order to fix this, we need to put the $sign in the row and the column, which is B and 4, and then hit enter. This value will obviously not change. If you drag now you can see, and we can validate also then that in each of the value, in each of the total cost, the tax multiplier is pointing to the absolute cell reference, which is the tax multiplier, and remaining cost and shipping is the relative cell reference, which is moving down as we are going down with the total cost. So in this way, we can make use of the absolute cell reference where we want to preserve the relationship to a formula location. So data validation is an Excel feature that you can use to define restriction on what data can or should be entered in a cell. You can configure data validation to prevent users from entering data that is not valid. Let's consider an example where you can see on the screen we have to enter the alphabet into each cell, and the condition is that the alphabet should be from this data range. The data range is from A to F. That means you can only enter the alphabet between A to F. If the entered alphabet is other than A to F, then it should give you some warning, or it should not allow you to enter the wrong data or the invalid data. Now let's suppose I'm adding A. It's fine because it's coming between A to F. Now let's suppose I have entered Z, and now I can move on to the next cell, and it is not giving me any warning. It is not restricting me to enter the wrong or invalid input. So this is where the data validation comes into picture. So what data validation will do, it will restrict me to enter the wrong data or will only allow me to enter data between A to F. So how to apply the data validation? Select the entire enter alphabet section and go to the data section onto the header. Once you are on the data section, there is something called data validation. Select the data validation section and the data validation screen will come up. Now under the settings, it will say allow. And it is asking me to enter the values. What type of values? I need the list. And now it is asking me to import the source. So I'll have to give the source. So the list should be that it will create a list. And since I'm selecting the list of this data, the list will be formed with values of each cell from this data sheet or from this data table. And it will create the list out of it. I'll again go to the input message, and input message I'll type enter data, and the input message should be values between A to F. So this will be the input message. So whenever the user will be on to this particular cell under the enter alphabet, this message will be shown to the user, where the title will say enter data and the input message will say that the value should be between A to F. Now I'll go to the alert, error alert. Error alert, there are three types of error alert. The style will say stop, warning or information. So I'll select the stop here. If the value have entered outside this particular list, outside the A to F, then the error alert will be shown to the user and user will be forced to change the value. I'll give the title as error, wrong data, and here error message would be please enter A to F only. I'll click on to OK. So now you can see I have selected the cell and it is asking me to enter data and the value should be between A to F. Again, if I select this cell, it will again give me this particular message. If I select anything outside this particular table, it will not show me any message. So since I have selected the data in the form of list, it will give me the option to choose the values between the range from the data table. I'll select C. It is a valid input. It will not give me any error. Now I will again type B. So since B is within the range of this data, it's not giving me any error. Now I will type Z. If I try to move on to next cell, it will throw me an error warning. It will say error, wrong data, please enter A to F only. I can either do cancel and this data will go off or vanish, or I can click on to retry and retry will ask me to change the data, and this time I have entered A and I can go through. So in this way the data validation comes handy. Data validation is very much important when you want the user to enter the data from the selected list or from the selected range. In this way you can restrict the user to enter the wrong or a invalid input. So whenever you type a date into Excel, you may never see an underlying serial number. So a serial number, when I talk about the serial number, there is a number associated with every time and every date in Excel. And that date starts from 1st January 1900. So Excel uses a numbering system with dates beginning with 1 January 1900 as the serial date number of 1. And then the numbering will continue until today. So let's see what the serial number and how the serial number you can see for your date. So let's just see the serial number for 1st January 1900. So this is 1st January 1900, and copy this cell onto the next cell. Just do paste values. So what paste values will do, it will paste just the values of that particular date, which is basically the date values and not the exact content of that cell. So as you can see that the value of this particular cell or this particular date is 1. So similarly, if I write today, it will give me the date for today, and I'll copy this cell and here I'll do the paste values. This will give me the value or the underlying serial number for that particular day. So you can compare that on 1st January 1900 the value was 1, and today, as of today, the value is 44,814. So you can say that these many days have elapsed since the 1st January 1900. So this is basically the date calculation as far as the Excel is concerned. So when we do certain operations with Excel, this comes very handy. We will see that in this particular example set where we will do certain calculations with respect to dates. We'll do the addition of the dates, we'll do subtraction of the date. So this is only possible because of the underlying serial number that we have. Before we jump on to it, let's see there are certain shortcuts, first being control and colon that will insert the date. So if I do control colon, so you can see it will just space the date for today. Next is command colon, it will insert the time. So command colon and it is inserting the time, which is the current time. Now equals now. So this formula will give you the today's date as well as the today's time, or the current time, or the current date. So next is today. If I give this function today, so this function will give me the today's date, the latest today's date. So this was all about the date. Next thing is time. So every date has an associated time also. In Excel, for time, we have a fraction value and that starts with 12 AM. So the day starts with 12 AM. So 12 AM will be treated as 0 and then the calculation goes on. So let's suppose when you are trying to calculate the 6 PM value, the Excel will show up the underlying value as 0.75. So let's see how. So I'll do command colon. This will give me the today's or the current time, and I'll copy this time onto the next cell. I'll do the paste values. So as you can see, it is giving me the value in fraction as 0.8548611. So this is fraction, and if I edit this and will do 6 PM as what we have talked about, that 6 PM will be 0.75. So I'll copy this, and again here I'll do the paste values. So as you can see, it's 0.5, and since the date is being calculated from 12 AM, so this value should be 0. I'll leave this. And see, this value is 0. So for time, the underlying value is fraction, but Excel interprets this as a time serial number and format the cell accordingly. So you can calculate this fraction for any time during the day by taking the total number of seconds that have passed from the midnight, as I talked about, it was 12 AM, until your time value, and dividing it by 86,400 seconds in a day. So in a whole day, you have 86,400 seconds. From the midnight, you have to take till your time and divided it by 86,400 seconds, and you will get your own fraction. So this is basically the time, the underlying serial number for time. So now the question comes, why this serial number is very much important for date and time calculations. So it is important because you can't sum up two dates. So when you have a serial number associated or an integer value associated with a date, you can do the calculations quite easily. So let's see with this example. Now let's suppose this is the invoice we have, and this is the invoice date, the date on which the invoice was created, and this is the invoice due date. So we have calculated that the invoice due date should be 30 days. So the 30 days is the marking of the invoice due date. And now what we need to do, we need to calculate the invoice due date first. So here is the field called current date. So as we know that the current date would be the function today. If I enter, it will just give me the current date. And now the invoice due date, since we know that 30 days was the marking time, so the invoice due date would be the invoice date plus 30 days, right? So just select the cell, equals, select the date, and plus 30 days. So now, since we are adding a date with an integer, obviously this is an invalid operation, right? But since A9, that is the date, has the underlying serial number, so it is easy to do these kind of calculations. So here the date would be having an underlying serial number, and we are adding up an integer value with another integer value, which will again be giving up a date 30 days ahead of that particular selected date. Hit enter and you will see, or you can validate easily that 30 days we have added to that particular invoice date. And now drag to apply the formula to all other cells. So here the invoice age, we need to calculate the invoice age. So how the invoice age is calculated? The invoice age is calculated with the current date. So the current date minus the invoice date will give you the invoice age. We'll write equals, we'll select this date minus, and we'll select the invoice date. So again, you can see that since there are two date formats, with two date formats, you can't do subtraction or addition, right? But since they have an underlying serial number, you can still do that same. Hit enter and you will see that 8 days is the invoice age for that particular date. Now drag the cell to apply the formula to all other cells, but now what you see that the formula that you have applied is wrong here. The values are coming wrong. Why? Because you are not treating this current date as the static one or the absolute cell reference. So all we need to do is, since this B6 or the current date is fixed, so we'll apply the concept of absolute cell reference. I have created a video on absolute cell references. I'll paste that in the comment section. Do check that video out and you will easily understand that what is basically the concept of absolute cell reference and why it is very much important over here. Hit enter and now you drag down and this time you will see that the calculation is fine. So now next is the number of days invoice has passed the deadline. So the calculation would be the invoice age minus 30 days. Hit enter and then scroll down and you will see that the minus sign indicates that there are still 22 days or 19 days left for this invoice due date to come, and 42 means that 12 days has already passed the invoice deadline. So these two values or these two invoice need action since they have already passed the due date, and minus sign means that due date is yet to come. So there is a clear-cut example of why the underlying serial number is important for time and date calculations in Excel, and how you can leverage the time and date calculations as part of your invoice or other fields. So date value function is oftenly used when we try to find out the value associated with the date. As we all know that the date has the underlying serial number, and that serial number starts from 1st January 1900 till today. So every date, each and every date in Excel has an associated serial number, and that serial number can be figured out using the date value function. So let's see how we get this date value error and how to resolve the date value error then. So let's suppose if I write equals today. So today will give me the date of today. So today is 10th September 2022. And now if I try to figure out the date value, and if I select this date, I will get this value error. So this is not expected because I can find the date value using other ways also. How? Just copy this cell. I have copied this cell. Now select any other cell and then go to the home, and under home you will see a paste option. Under paste option, just click on to paste values. So when you click on to the paste values, it will paste just the value of this particular date. So which is indirectly way to find out the value associated with the date other than the date value function. So why we are getting this value error over here, which is basically not expected one, right? So in order to resolve this, we will make use of a function called text. So select any cell, just type text and then a bracket, select the date, and after selecting the date we will use the format text. So format text in the sense that what we are doing over here is we are converting the date into text format, and then we have to specifically mention over here in the next section the format in which we want to convert that date. So the format would be YYYY, MM and DD. So now you can see that my date has been converted into text, and the format is YYY, MM and DD. So you can verify this particular cell, the date format cell, and you can verify this was the date category. And now if I select this one and check for format cells, you can see that this is under general category and the sample is this one because we have specifically mentioned the format for that text. And now if I use the function date format or date value, and this time I can get the value of that particular date. So this is a way in which you can resolve the value error while using the date value function in order to figure out the value of a particular date or the underlying value of a particular date, the numeral values. Or directly straightforward also you can use a single formula. You can select the cell, type equals, give date value, and under date value give text, and under text select your date, comma, The format was YYYY hyphen MM hyphen DD. Close this bracket, close another bracket and hit enter, and still you can get the similar result. So this is just the single formula. Why I'm talking about the single formula? Because what happens if you have multiple dates and you want to drag the cell to apply the formula to all the other cells, you can use the single formula and can drag and use it. 3D formulas typically refers to specific cells across multiple worksheets. This formula is also sometimes called as cubed formula. So when I say it refers to specific cell across multiple worksheets, I mean that let's take an example. On the screen you can see I need to get the summary of the sales from 4 of these cities. In the quarter 1, I have sales for California as 20, Florida as 25 and so on. And I have the data for quarter 2. I need to put the sales summary into this page where it should be doing the sum of the quarter 1 result and the quarter 2 result. All you need to do is, it's just a simple summation only. Type equals, type sum, open the bracket, and now what you need to do is just go to the quarter 1 worksheet, select the first cell for the California and then press shift key. After pressing the shift key, select the second worksheet, that is quarter 2, and on the top you can validate that quarter 1 is selected, quarter 2 is selected and the B2 is selected. Since the sales value I have selected is B2 and this B2 referring to California on both the sheets, that is the quarter 1 and quarter 2. And now just close the bracket. And now on the top you can see sum quarter 1 colon quarter 2, and in both the quarter 1 and the quarter 2, the B2 cell is selected. Hit enter. Now you can see that 30 is the sum of both the values from quarter 1 and quarter 2. Now let's suppose I'm changing the value over here to 15. So the expected result should be 35. And you can see the 35 is changed since the formula is referring to the B2, the sales of California from both the quarter 1 and quarter 2. Now all I need to do is just drag the formula and it will be applicable for all the other cells as well. So in this way we can refer to specific cells across multiple worksheets. Alternatively, instead of using the sum function, I can directly sum the two values from the different sheets. Just put the equals and then all you need to do is just put the sheet name. So the sheet name was quarter 1, QTR1, put a exclamation and then select the cell name. So here the cell name I'll select, if I check over here, I'll select B2 from this cell and let's sum B4 with the B4 of the next cell, B2 with B4. So here I'll select the B2 from quarter 1 sheet. I'll add with QTR2 colon exclamation and I'll sum it with the B4 and hit enter. And let's suppose I'm changing this value as 10. So it now converted to 30. So the formula architecture, if I talk about the formula architecture, so the formula architecture would be the sheet 1 name, exclamation, and then the cell 1 name plus the sheet 2 name, exclamation, the cell 2 name. And this would be the formula architecture for 3D formulas. The if function is a logical function that is designed to return one value if a condition you specify evaluates to true and another value if it evaluates to false. It is a normal if condition. So you have a condition. If that condition is satisfied, a true value is returned. If that condition is not satisfied, a false value is returned. So as you can see on the screen, we have the formula architecture of the if function that has 3 parameters. First is the logical test, the test that you evaluates. Second is value if true. So if the logical test pass, the value if true will be considered. Else, if the logical test fails, then the value if false will be picked up by the if function. So let's implement this with the simple example. So we have the bonus spreadsheet. So under the bonus spreadsheet, we have some salesperson name and we have the sales number over here. We have the sales target. So as you can see, for the first person, the sales target is 50. The sales target is for everyone. So we have the sales as 30, but the sales target was 50. So there is a lag in the sales, right? So for him, the bonus amount would be 0. Similarly, for the second person, the bonus amount will also be 0. For next person, the bonus amount will be there and that bonus amount will be 2%. So a sales bonus would be 2%. So let's implement using the if function. Since we know that if this condition is false, they will not get the bonus. If the condition is true, they will get the bonus. So let's use the if function over here and then we will drag to apply the formula to all other cells in order to calculate the bonuses. Select the cell and click onto the formula bar. Once you click onto the formula bar, then the formula builder will open up. And under the formula builder, you will see something called if, sum. So nearly all the functions would be listed under the formula builder. Click onto the if condition. When you click onto the if condition, you will see the first field being the logical test. So the logical test was that the sales should be equals to or greater than the sales target. But since for all the other salesperson, the sales target is fixed, so this should be going under the absolute cell reference. If you don't know the concept of absolute cell reference, I have created a video on it. I will put the link in the description box. Please do check that video in order to understand what absolute cell reference is all about and why we are using it here. So we have fixed the sales target. So the sales should be greater than or equals to the sales target. This was the logical test. So next field is the value if true. So if the value is true, then our bonus amount would be decided. So the bonus amount was 2% of the sales. So we will click onto the sales and we will multiply it by 2%. And if let's suppose the value is false, then the sales amount would be 0. Hit enter and we'll close the formula builder. And now you can see that the bonus amount for this particular person, the first person, is 0 since it has not met or exceed the sales target. Now I will scroll down and will apply the formula to all the other cells. And you can see for the second person also it is 0. For the third person where the sales was 100 and it was exceeding the sales target, so we are giving 2% of its sales. That is $2 or rupees or whatever your conversion ratio is. So this was the numeral value. You can also give the string value also. Like instead of 0, you can give no bonus or something like that. So again, go to the formula builder. And under the formula builder, under the if condition, so instead of value if false, we will write no bonus. And now we will drag it to apply to all other cells. And this time instead of 0, it is just giving me the statement as no bonus. So this is easy to understand and read. So this is all about the if function, which is a logical function that is designed to return one value, either the false or true, depending upon the condition you are putting into it. So conditional formatting in Excel enables you to highlight cells with a certain color depending upon the cell value. Using this feature, you can make analyzing data easier by applying visual styles to that data. So let's understand conditional formatting with this simple example. So on the screen, you can see the sales report for the salesperson of specific region for Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. So since this sales report is quite small, the data visualization is quite easy, but you can make it more interesting by introducing the conditional formatting. So conditional formatting could be introducing a color code, introducing cell bar, or any other of your choice. So let's see how and what type of conditional formatting we can apply to this sales report and how it would be easy to visualize the data. So all you need to do is just select the section of the data onto which you need to apply the conditional formatting. And then onto the home section, you will see something called conditional formatting. So if you click onto the conditional formatting, you will get certain options. So I will choose the color scale. What it will do, it will color the cell according to the value. And if I hover over it, it will give me that the first one was green, yellow, red, where red being the lowest and green being the highest. If I click this, and you can see that the entire data is now color coded, where the dark green representing the highest value and the red representing the least value. So my least value is 0 and it is in the dark red. And 72,258 is the highest among all the values. So it is represented as the dark green, and rest value is between the green and red with light green, light yellow, dark yellow, light red and all. Similarly, instead of using this type of color coding, you can choose any of the color coding of your choice. So let's suppose we'll use the red, white, blue, where blue being the highest and red being the lowest and white being the average value. If I click onto it, you can see that this is the color coding or the conditional formatting I choose for my particular values. So you can apply other conditional formatting as well. I'll choose the solid fill this time, and this will represent my data in the form of the graphs. Similarly, I can choose the icon set. There are different icon sets of my choice. I'll select the 3 arrows, which is colored 3 arrows for reference. If you click, you can see that the down arrow representing the low value, the green arrow is representing the high value, and the yellow is representing the medium value. And you can see, since I have already put the data bars, and on top of the data bar I have put the icon set as well. So here the value is represented in the data bar also and in the form of the icon set also. Now if I want to clear the conditional formatting, again I'll select the entire data, I'll go to the conditional formatting, and there I'll choose the clear rules. There I have two options: clear rules from the selected cell or clear rules from the entire sheet. I'll click on clear rules from the entire sheet and all my conditional formatting will be vanished. So these are the predefined set of conditional formatting. If I want to choose or want to create a new rule, I can click onto the new rule section, and under the new rule section I can choose the style of my choice. It could be 2-color scale, data bar, icon set, classic, or any other of my choice. So I can set that formula, and that formula will be applicable onto my data sheet. So as you can see on the screen, we have the sales report. So we are considering the example of the sales report where you can see the sales report for different quarters for a particular salesman of that particular region. And let's suppose if you want to hide any cell, like let's suppose I want to hide the cell containing the value 0, I can do it using the conditional formatting. So if you want to learn what conditional formatting is all about and want to understand that how you can enable conditional formatting to highlight cells with certain color depending upon the cell value, you can check the video on conditional formatting. I'll paste the video link in the description box. Please do check that video out. So now let's use the conditional formatting to hide the cell. So go to the home tab under the ribbon, and when you click onto the home tab, there will be an option for conditional formatting. You need to select the conditional formatting and there will be an option for new rule. So we will be creating a new rule. The rule would be that we need to hide any value that is equals to or greater than 0. So under the style, select the classic, and when you select the classic, the sub option will come up. In that sub option, select only format cell that contain. Now click on to the next section and select the cell value, since we are working on the cell and we want to hide the data of the cell. And here it is asking me to choose different formulation. By default between was selected. I'll just give less than or equal to. I'll type as 0. Since I want to hide the data of the cell, all I need to do is under format with, I'll go to the custom format. So under the customize format, I will go to the font section and then I'll choose the color. So by default the color is automatic. I'll choose the white color and I'll click on to OK, and there also I'll give OK. So before hitting on OK, you can see that 0 is visible over here under cell G5. I'll click on to OK, and now you can see that the data is hidden. The 0 is hidden from the cell. So now let's consider another example. This time I will try to hide the cell content, cell number F7, which is having the value of 21,000. Again, I'll go to the conditional formatting under the new rule, and under the new rule I'll go to the style as classic. I'll choose only format cell that contain specific text to cell value, and then here I'll give as equals to, and the value I'll give as 21,000. And again customized format. Under the customized format, go to the color, choose white color, click on to OK, and then click on to OK. And now you can see that my cell value number 21,000 is hidden. The value will be there. See, there is no difference in the calculation. The value is there. If you click here onto the formula bar, you can see the value, but the value will be in the hidden mode. If you want to take this snapshot or a screenshot of this whole sheet, snapshot or the print will not be showing the value for the quarter 3 under cell F7, since it is in the hidden mode. So in this way you can use the conditional formatting to hide the value of a particular cell. So a pivot table is a special Excel tool that allows you to summarize and explore data interactively. So this is just a normal table, but if you want to show it more interactively, your data should be more expressive, you have to use the concept of pivot table in Excel. So before moving on how to create a pivot table, let's talk about what pivot and pivot table is all about. So pivot means the ability to alter the perspective of a received data. So let's suppose you are getting or receiving a data in the form of a table. So what you are doing it through pivot table is you are changing or you are altering the perspective of a received data. That means you are receiving a data called performance appraisal report. The data you will be showing is also performance appraisal report, but the look and feel and how you're presenting the data will be different. The perspective will be different. That is called as pivot. And what pivot table is all about? The ability to create a brand new table based upon the existing data for the purpose of viewing, reporting and analyzing data. So on the screen, you can see a sample table, which is a performance appraisal report. So this is having the first name and the last name, gender, date of birth, position of that respective persons, and the department in which these people are working with their respective salary and the performance rating. So let's create a sample pivot table out of it. And then we will see how data is interactively represented through pivot table. So all you need to do is select any of the cell. So we need to select any cell within this table and not the empty cell. And then you need to go to the insert tab. So on the top, you can see the insert tab is there. Under the insert tab, you will see something called pivot table. Just click onto the pivot table. It will ask you to select the table range. So you can see by default, it has selected the table. So we will either click on to new worksheet or the existing worksheet. So since I need to create a new worksheet for my pivot table, I'll click on to OK. And this will create a pivot table in a new worksheet. You can see a new worksheet is created. And if I zoom it, you can see a sample empty pivot table is created. On the right side, you can see something called pivot table fields, where I need to select the pivot field name. And once I select the field name and correspondingly I set the values under these four fields, four areas called filter, column, rows and values, my pivot table will be created. So this is basically how to create a sample pivot table. Now next is specifying pivot table data. So before creating a pivot table, you must know what you want to analyze. There are basically three questions that one has to ask themselves before proceeding up with the creation of the pivot table data or the pivot table. First is, what do you want your column headers to be? So since every table is created with the rows and columns, so first question should be, what do you want your column headers to be? Second is, what do you want your row headers to be? And third, what data you want to analyze. So if you successfully answer these three questions, you will be successfully be able to create the pivot table. So by understanding the layout, you will have a better perspective of how to create a pivot table. So first I'll go to the performance appraisal sheet and will see this table and try to analyze that in my pivot table, what column headers to be, what row headers to be, and what type of data the pivot table should hold. So after analysis, I'll again go to my pivot table sheet. I'll check the pivot names, field names, and then let's suppose I need the performance rating as the row. So I'll check for the performance rating and this should be my row. So you can see now my first row label is the performance rating. So each performance rating is associated to a salary of a particular person. So all I need to do is, so I need to get the salary under the values. So if I drag the salary under the values, so you can get the total grand value or the sum of the total salaries over here for first, second and third appraisal rating, performance rating basically. So we have the row label as first, which is, there are like three performance rating. So first performance rating, the sum of the salaries, second performance rating, the sum of salaries, third performance rating, sum of salaries, and then we have the grand total, which is sum of all the salaries. And now we will do little modification. So earlier we have kept the performance rating under row. And now what I'll do, will just drag the performance rating from rows to column, and now you see the changes. So this time what I did, I changed the performance rating to the columns, and you can see that now I have three different columns, and my row is the salary, and you can see the first column or the first rating is having the sum of the salaries. Third rating is having the sum of the salaries for all those people who are having the third performance rating, and then we have the grand total. So you can see in this way, when changing any particular value from row to column or column to row, the structure for my pivot table will also change and the representation of my data will also change. So next I will drag the position to the rows section, and you can see on the screen when I dragged it to the rows section, the position to the rows section. So my table layout has changed, where my columns are strictly the performance rating and my rows are the position. So my entire table is now created as the position in the row, and for each position, for each rating, my sum of the salaries or the salaries are listed. So here is the grand total. So the pivot table will now show the income of each position separated by the performance rating. So now let's see how we can change the pivot table calculation. So by default, if you see the values, which is basically the sum of the salaries, so it is by default in the sum state. That means whatever values I am entering, it is giving me the grand total, which is basically the sum of the salaries. If you click, if you're using the earlier version of the Excel, there will be a drop down next to the value section or for the sum of the salaries. If you're using a new version, double click to it and you will see something called pivot table fields summarized by. So you can see that by default sum is selected. If I click on any other value like count, average, max, min, I'll select average here, click on to OK. So this time you can notice that the pivot table now shows the average salary of each position and performance rating. So these are the average salaries, and here also the average for that particular column is displayed. So now let's see the very important topic of the pivot table, that is filtering and sorting a pivot table. For that, what we need to do is we need to drag the department into the filter box. Here is the department and we need to drag it to the filter box because we need to put the filter onto the department. And now you can see on the top the department is coming with the filter option or the selection box. By default everything is selected. I'll unselect everything and by default I'll select just the sales one. And you can see by selecting the drop down as sales, the value for sales is just coming over here. Since you can see that this executive and senior executive are from the sales department, so only these two are listed. Now if you select any other like marketing also apart from sales, so people from marketing and sales will be selected and this will be coming out to be as multiple items selected. If I selected all, so all will be shown. If I select just accounts, so you will see accounts will be shown. So for multiple selections, there will be multiple items. For all selection, there will be all items. And for individual, the individual name will be displayed. And the member or the member belonging to that particular selection will be displayed on the pivot table. So this is how you can apply the filter in order to filter out easily the data that you want to show to your customer or you want to keep it for your reference. Now we will do one more experiment. We will drop the department from the filter to the row section and we will bring down the position below department, and this time you can see that the positions are now grouped by department. So here we have the positions and these positions are now grouped by the departments. So you can expand or collapse and can easily visualize your data. So this is basically the real visualization what I was talking about, that you can now easily visualize by grouping all your data together, by filtering all your data together or by sorting all your data together. So filtering we have seen. Now we will see something called sorting. So if I click onto the row label and this time you can see under sort there will be ascending and descending. If I select ascending, so by default everything is ascending. Now if I select descending, so my entire row label will be in the descending state. Similarly for column label also you can choose ascending or descending depending upon how you want your data to be visualized. So now that we have created the sample pivot table, now let's see how we can create a pivot chart out of the sample pivot table that we have created. So we are currently on the pivot sheet. Now all you need to do is you need to go to the analyze section, the pivot table analyze, and under the pivot table analyze you will see an option called pivot chart. So click onto the pivot chart and by default you will see that the data that is there as part of the pivot table, for that same data a chart will be created. So instead of going through the pivot table itself, you can just go through the pivot chart and can easily understand or visualize your data. So now let's see how the pivot chart changes when we change the pivot chart fields. So all you need to do is just remove the department and now we will change the performance rating from column to the row, or basically from legend to the axis. So now you can see that the data is listed based upon the position and the performance rating. Down you can check, and on the value level you can see that the average of the salaries are listed. So in this way, the pivot chart also created based upon the value that you have set for your pivot table. And now you can drag and can put your pivot chart next to your pivot table for easy viewing and analysis. So this is all about pivot table in a single sentence. If I want to summarize it, it is just to explore data interactively. As I have already told you, just for explore data interactively. Now you can also see how we have changed the original data, which is basically a complete table format, into more interactive and easy format. And it is very much easy for viewing, reporting and analysis of the data. So slicers enable you to filter data within a pivot table. And if you insert slicer, it will appear as a set of buttons allowing for rapid filtering of data. So let's see slicers with the simple example. So on the screen, you can see a donation table where you have the date on which the donation was made, amount, city and payment type for individual donations for a particular day. And we will be creating a pivot table out of it. So how to create a pivot table? Again, you can refer to the video in the description box. So here I will just create a sample pivot table out of the donation table. Click onto any of the cell in the table and go to the insert tab, and under insert tab, click onto the pivot table. It will by default select your entire table and just create a new worksheet. Click onto OK and an empty pivot table will be created. On the right side, you will see the pivot table fields. These pivot table fields you need to select in order to create the pivot table. So we will drag the city to the rows section or to the row box. And then we will select the payment type into the column section. And then we will drag the amount to the value section. And now you can see that my pivot table is created successfully with the amount, city and payment type, where my row is the city, my column is the payment type, and the values that are there inside my pivot table is the sum of the total amount, or is the sum of the amount. So now let's consider that this data is very, very huge and you want to filter out some of the data based upon the row label or based upon the payment type. So how you can do that? So here comes slicers to the rescue. So all you need to do is just select any of the cell inside your pivot table, go to the pivot table analyze section, and under pivot table analyze, you will see an option called as insert slicer. Click onto the insert slicer, and insert slicer will ask you what type of data you want to put into your slicer. I will select the city and the payment type. Click onto OK. And you can see there are two slicers created. First is the city and second is the payment type. So these are basically the filter option or the slicers to filter out your data under the pivot sheet quite easily. And now let's see how these slicers are helpful in order to filter out the results. So let's say I just want the city data for the Atlanta only. I will click on to Atlanta and you will see the data related to the Atlanta will be visible, and where the two payment type, one is the gift card and second is the online, will only be highlighted, and rest two, because these are not available for Atlanta, these will be in grayed out section. If you click to gift card, so you can see that the data for Atlanta only for the gift card will be visible. If you click on to online, you can see the changes that the row label is for Atlanta and the column label is for the online, or the payment type is for the online, and you will see that the information for Atlanta for online payment will be visible. You can select multiple options from the city as well using the shift key. Click onto the shift key and you can select multiple options from here. If you want to clear the filter, click onto this funnel option and this will clear your filters. And now you can again select the multiple selections using the shift key and selection. And you can see that I have selected 4 cities and these 4 cities are listed and all the payment types are listed over here. I'll select just the card one. And since card is only for the Austin and Chicago and not for these two, so the data for Atlanta and Columbus will not be visible. I'll select now cash also. And this time you will see that one more city is added. I'll select the gift card also here. And now you can see all the cities are listed. Now I will select the online mode also. And since I have selected 4 cities under the city option, so all the cities will be listed because I have selected all the payment type that were available for all those 4 cities. So in this way, you can filter out the things quite easily and you can analyze the data quite easily when using these slicers. So here we will be talking about how we can update a pivot table if already created. So on the screen, you can see a donation table where you have the date on which the donation was made, the amount of donation, city from which the donation was made, and the payment type through which the donation was actually made. So let's create a sample pivot table out of this table, and then we will make changes to this main table, and then we will see how we can update the existing pivot table. So select the cell and under the insert tab, click onto the pivot table. So by default, your entire table will be selected and it will ask you want to create a new worksheet. Just click onto OK and a new pivot empty table will be created. Now let's create a sample pivot table over here. We will select the date under the row section and amount under the value section. And you can see that the sample pivot table grouping all the items together is created. So now for the January month, we have just 3 data over here. Now what we will do, we will insert another date number 4, and we will copy this here. And this time we will set the date as 4th of January. Here amount let's set to 1200, city any test, and payment method as card only. So now if I go and check under my pivot table, you will see that the January month is still showing 3 records, where in the main table we have updated one more record for 4th January. So pivot table will not automatically update and reflect the data changes. Either the Excel spreadsheet needs to be closed and reopened, thus forcing an update, or you can manually update the workbook using the refresh button. So there will be a refresh button. Select your pivot table, go to the pivot table analyze tab, and under the analyze tab, there will be an option for refresh. So either you can refresh or refresh all, anything is fine. I'll click onto the refresh. And now once I clicked onto the refresh, you can see that the sheet is refreshed and the new data is appearing onto my pivot table with the updated data of the main table. So this is all about how you can update a pivot table using the refresh button. So how does grouping work in Excel first of all? So the group is an Excel tool which groups 2 or more rows or columns. With grouping, the user has the option to minimize and maximize the grouped data. The rows or columns of the group collapse on minimizing and expand on maximizing. So this was the general definition of grouping. So let's see how grouping works with this simple example. So on the screen, you can see a table of donations where we have the field called date on which the donation was made, the amount, the city from where the donation was initiated, and the payment type of the donation. So now what we will do, we will group the items together in such a way that user can able to see the donations based upon the month and not based upon the date. So this is just a sample example where we have just considered some sample amount of data, but in the real term, the list will be too huge to understand. Where if you specifically go to each and every date, it would be very difficult to understand or to see on which date or month the donation was made. So to make things easy, we will take help of grouping, where instead of showing the data in terms of the date, we will show the data in terms of the months. So all you need to do is just maximize or minimize the month in order to see the donation of that particular date within that particular month. So let's see how we can achieve that. So select any cell within this table and then go to the insert tab. So once you are on the insert tab, you will see an option for pivot table. Click onto the pivot table. So before I click onto the pivot table option here, I request you to please check our video on pivot table in order to understand what pivot table is all about and what is the importance of using the pivot table here. I will paste the link in the description box. Please do check that. Now click onto the pivot table. And once you click onto the pivot table, it will select, by default will select your entire table. I'll choose by default. And here the option is to create a new worksheet. Click onto OK. So once you click onto the OK, it will create an empty pivot sheet. So this is the pivot table, an empty pivot table. So now we will fill the data according to our need and requirement. On the right side, you will see something called pivot table fields, where we have to select the field names and have to set under filter column rows or values in order to create the pivot table. So we will be grouping the donation sheet as per the date or the month. So we will drag the date into the rows section, and you can see once I have dragged the date into the rows section, there is another field created called months, and on the right side or into the pivot table, you will see that January, February, like the month wise selection is created with the plus sign to expand and once you expand it, the date will be listed as per the months here. Now this is the row label, which is actually consisting all the month side data, but the exact data is not here. So in order to fill the exact data, what we need to do, we need to set the amount, the donation amount, to the values field. And now you can see our pivot table is created and the grouping of the items is done. So this pivot table will summarize the amount of donation made for a particular month. These summaries can be expanded by clicking onto the plus icon beside the desirable month. So if I click onto the January plus sign, you will see that the date is listed like 1st January, 2nd January, 3rd January, and the amount will also listed that on 1st January the donation made was 10,000. You can check over here also. On 1st January the donation made as 10,000. On 2nd January the donation made was 15,000. 15,000, and here for the particular January month, it is displaying the total donation that was made for the January month. So this is how grouping work. And since we are using the pivot table for grouping the elements or for grouping the data, so it is just for easy analysis and viewing of the data. So now let's see how we can modify the grouping. On the table, right click and click onto the group. So you can see that the days and months are by default selected. So all we need to do is just remove the date and just select the months. Click on to OK, and this time you can see that the days section is gone. Your entire sheet or the pivot table sheet is now under the row label as months. So we have just the month data over here and not the exact date data. Now again right click, and this time we will select the ungroup because we want to ungroup the whole section. We don't want the group mechanism over here. Click on to the ungroup, and now you can see that the data is exactly the same as your donation table was, where the date was listed and the donation amount was listed. Similarly here also the complete date is listed and the donation amount is listed, and it is no more grouped in terms of the date, months, etc. So in this way you can group and ungroup the data. So this is how the grouping in Excel works, and since we are using pivot table to group things together, so it will be easy for the purpose of viewing, reporting, and analysis of the data. XLOOKUP function is to find things in a table or a range of row. For example, if you want to find out the price of an automotive part with the part number, you can find it easily using the XLOOKUP in a variety or a big data sheet. Or if you want to find out the employee name based upon the employee ID, XLOOKUP will be very handy to use. With XLOOKUP, you can look in one column for a search item and return a result from the same row in another column, regardless of which side the return column is on. So let's talk about the syntax of XLOOKUP. So before that, I need to inform you that XLOOKUP is not available for Excel 2016 or Excel 2019. However, in some of the sheets, you might find XLOOKUP when using the Excel 2016 or 19. It could be because someone might have created using the new version of Excel, and you might be opening that same Excel in your 16 or 19. So that time you can come across XLOOKUP function. So now let's see the syntax for XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP function can be called the similar way as other functions like sum, if are called. Give a equal and type XLOOKUP, and inside the bracket you need to give certain values. First is the lookup value. The lookup value is the value that you are going to search for. Next is the lookup array. The lookup array means the array of range to search. Now let's suppose you are finding the lookup value. So from where you need to find the lookup value, it is from the lookup array. Next is the return array, the array or range to return. That means the output should be from some return array, so that once the lookup value is found out, the same corresponding value could be returned from that return array. Next is the if not found. This is an optional value where a valid match is not found. It will return if not found value if you are specifying it, the text you are specifying. Else it will just give you NA. NA means not available. Next is the match value. This is also optional parameter. It specifies the match type. If you're giving 0, it will check for exact match. If nothing is found, return NA. This is by default. This is a default function. 0 is a default function. If you're giving -1, also exact function. And if not found, it will return the next smallest item. 1 means also exact match. And if not found, it will return the next larger value. And it also accepts 2. 2 means wild card match. So we have values like 0 by default, -1, 1 and 2. We will see these things in our examples. So next is the search mode. Specify the search mode you want to use. 1 is by default. It will perform the search starting from the first index. That means it will start searching from the top. -1, it will start searching from the bottom or the reverse search. 2 means perform the binary search that relies on the lookup array being sorted in the ascending order. Similarly, minus 2 will perform the binary search that relies on the lookup array being sorted in the descending order. So your search mode would be 1, -1, 2 and -2. So let's see how the lookup function works. When we say through lookup, you can look into one column for a search item and then return the result from the same row in another column. So let's say I'm writing USA and my expectation is that I need to return the prefix value in the next column. So how this is possible? I'll type equals, I'll type X lookup, I'll select this X lookup. First one is the lookup value was my USA, I'll select this cell, comma. Next is the lookup array. Lookup array means from where this particular value needs to be looked up. So this is the country field. I'll select the country column. Next is the return array. Return array means which value I need to return. I need to return the prefix value. I'll select the prefix. So next is if not found, match mode and search mode. These are optional, so I'm not giving them. I'll close the bracket and hit enter. And you can see that for USA +1 prefix is returned. Now all I need to do is I need to just replace the country name and hit enter. And you can see now for India +91 is displayed. Again, you can check for other country as well. Check for Russia. And you can see for Russia +7 is now returned. So what it is doing, it is just looking up for the country value from this G9 cell, and that country value or the lookup value, it is looking up into this particular country lookup array, and it is returning the value from this prefix or the return array column. And if it is finding out that particular Russia country, it is returning its prefix. And if let's suppose I am giving some other country like test, it will return NA as expected, since I have not given the if not found value. And if by chance I give the if not found value also, I'll give the text as wrong country, it will give me wrong country. I'll give test1, it will give me wrong country. But if I give again USA, it will give me +1. So in this way, XLOOKUP function can be used to find things in a table or in a range of rows. We will see another example for the XLOOKUP function. So on the screen, you can see the employee database where the employee ID, employee name and employee department is given. All I need to find out, if I give the employee ID, the employee name and department should come. So let's suppose I'm typing here as 8452. So 8452 is for Linda and the department is accounts. So when I give the employee ID, the corresponding employee name and department should be listed here. So all I need to do again here is equals, I'll type in XLOOKUP. What I need to find out? I need to find out the employee ID, comma, from where? From the employee ID lookup array. What I need to return? I need to return these two values, employee name and department. I'll select these two columns, that is the employee name and the department, and I will close because by default I am not using any other thing. If you hit enter, you can see that employee name Linda and account is displayed when I select the employee ID. Now let's change the employee ID to 7573. 7573. Hit enter and you can see Roy and engineering is by default selected. Now I need not to write the XLOOKUP again because the formula is set now. All I need to do is I need to change the employee ID and correspondingly value will be found out from this employee ID lookup array and the corresponding value would be returned from the return array. Again, if let's suppose the value is not found, I can give no data. And this time if I give any wrong entry, it will give me no data. So this is the error handling where if the data is not matching up with my employee database, it should give me the proper error message saying no data, and the customer has to, or the person has to use another employee ID in order to figure out the employee name and department or the employee information. Now let's consider another example where we will see for the match mode and the search mode concept. So here what we want, we need to figure out the tax rate for the particular income. So a user needs to put his income here and the relevant tax rate would be allocated or the tax rate would be suggested to him. Now let's suppose I am just giving 84200 as my income. So relevant 24% should be given under the tax rate. So all I need to do is I need to type XLOOKUP and I need to figure out 84 the income from the maximum income section, and the return array should be the tax rate, and if not found it should give me 0, and match mode I'll give the match mode as 1. So as we know that it is an exact match, if nothing is found, it will return the next larger item. Okay, and then again I'll give 1. This search mode 1 would be perform a search starting from the first item. It will do the search from the top. Sorry, I didn't selected this income. Hit enter and you can see it is giving me 0.24%. 0.24 is the 24%. I'll give the value greater than 84,200. I'll give as 1, 84,201. Now you can see calculation has been done from the top, or the search has been done from the top. And you remember that we have done for the exact match, and if the value is not found, it should give me the next larger item. So according to this particular table, for the value 84,201, the next larger item would be 32%. So this should give me 32% instead of 0. Hit enter and you can see it is giving me 0.32. Why it is giving me 0.32? Because I have set the value as 1, the search mode as 1, where search mode means the next larger item. If you give -1 here, it should give me the next smaller item. You can see the exact match or the next smaller item. Hit enter and the next smaller item is 0.24, which is for the 84,200, because 84,201 will be somewhere between 24 and 32. So next smaller item was 0.24. And if I give 1, because for text calculations always the bigger item is calculated. So if I hit, it's just giving me 0.32. So this was the major example where I have covered the if not found, the match mode and the search mode, and all the relevant parameters of XLOOKUP function. So in this video, let's talk about the XLOOKUP with two simple examples. So let's go one by one. So in the example number 1, we have the table for the quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 and quarter 4 results, which is basically the sales results. And we have the income statement over here on the screen, where the total sales, cost of sales, gross profit, depreciation, interest, earning, tax and net profit is listed. So let's suppose for the quarter 1, we have some total sales, out of which the net profit is calculated. So if let's suppose a person wants to figure out the data for quarter 3, he can just enter the quarter 3 in this quarter section into this cell, and corresponding gross profit and net profit should be visible to him. And he need not to again go specifically into this table in order to figure out what was the gross profit or the net profit for that corresponding quarter. So how we can do this? We will take help of XLOOKUP. The XLOOKUP will find the value inside this table and will print the corresponding gross profit value and the net profit value for that particular quarter that we want to search for. So let's consider we want the data for quarter 2. So I'll enter. So I've entered quarter 2, but the values are not listing. So let's see how we can list the value. Put equal symbol. Just type in XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP, the first value will be the lookup value. So what is the lookup value? The lookup value is the gross profit here. So the next is the lookup array, where we have to find out the lookup value. So the lookup array is this one. That is from B6 to B16. And since we will be creating this value and drag it to the next cell, we have to just make it absolute cell reference. If you don't know the concept of absolute cell reference, I have kept a video link in the description box. Please do check in order to understand what absolute cell reference. Next, return array would be XLOOKUP of. Now here what I need to find out, the value for quarter 2, and where I need to find the value of quarter 2 inside this quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 4. And what I need to find out from these quarters is these values. And again, I need to put the absolute cell reference over here, so that if I am dragging the formula to other cell, the value should not be changing. Now I will close the bracket. So again, I'll repeat that if you don't know the concept of XLOOKUP, please do check the video in the description box before proceeding up with the nested XLOOKUP. So what we are trying to do over here is we need to figure out the value for the gross profit. But since we are just entering the quarter 2 heading, we are not entering the exact numbers. So what we need to do is we need to first figure out the gross profit within the income statement. And for that gross profit, we are figuring out the quarter 1, quarter 2 or a quarter wise result. So first it will look for the quarter 2, and from the quarter 2, it will just give me all the values for the quarter 2. And then I will look up for the gross profit within that particular quarter 2 section. So what I'm trying to do at the last is I'm trying to figure out the gross profit from the quarter 2 section only. and not from other sections, since specifically I have figured out the Q2 section from this particular X loop that is residing within that X loop. Now if I hit enter, you can see the value for Q2 gross profit is 36150, which is basically the exact gross profit for this Q2. Now since I've used the concept for absolute cell reference, I will just drag the formula to the net profit, and the net profit will be calculated or will be shown for Q2. Now next time I need not to set any formula. The formula is now already set. If I want to figure out the value for Q1, I'll just give Q1, hit enter, and you can see the gross profit for the Q1 will be shown, and the net profit for Q1 will also be shown, and that would be exactly correct. Now Q4, and you can see the gross profit and the net profit is exactly matching, or it is basically fetching from this particular table. So in the previous example, we have seen the nested XLOOKUP. Here we will see how we can use the sum function with nested XLOOKUP. So in this example, what we are trying to do is we have a table where we have the product like apple, grape, pear, and we have the quantity for each of these fruits, price, and then the total. Total means the price into quantity. Now what we need to figure out here is we need to give the start and the end. Now let's suppose I have given the start as apple and end as banana. So what it will do, it will just give me the total of all the fruits lying between apple and banana, including apple and banana also. So let's suppose I'm giving apple and I'm giving here is banana. So it should give me total of 11.96, 75.46, 18 and 17.1, which would be total up to, I'll give sum, and it should be 122.52. This I know because I have used the sum formula and I have just gave the reference for apple till banana. But what if a user wants to specifically give the start fruit and the end fruit and not select the cell reference? We'll use the nested XLOOKUP and we'll also use the sum function. So here, while using the sum, what we did, we just gave the starting cell reference and we gave the ending cell reference, and it did the sum right from the starting till the end index. So here we will use the same thing. We'll write sum, start the bracket, and we will give the reference first. The reference first means we'll have to give the reference of this, but we just know the fruit name. So what we'll do, we'll write XLOOKUP, and under the XLOOKUP we will search for apple, and apple we need to search from the product, and for that product we need to find the total value from this total sheet. I'll close this, I'll put the colon. So now we need to give the reference for banana. How? Put XLOOKUP and open the bracket, select banana, put comma, and then select all the products from the product list, and the return array should be from the total, and just close this bracket and close another bracket. There are two brackets, right? And now hit enter. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing sum and I'm trying to find out the value apple. For that value apple, I'm trying to figure out the total of that apple. In the second, what I'm doing is I am figuring out the total for banana. So in the first, I'm finding the total value for apple. In the second, I'm finding the total value for banana. And with this colon, I'm trying to sum the value right from apple to the banana, and I'll hit enter, and you can see now the value is 122.52, which is actually matching to the sum that we did previously before. So charts are the great way to visualize your data. On the screen, you can see the sales data of California and Florida monthly wise from January to March. So if I represent the table data in the form of a chart, you will be easily distinguish between the two values. So for comparison purpose and for easy visualization, charts are really handy. So let's suppose the table data is huge. So it would be very difficult to visualize the same amount of data in form of table. For that, the charts would be easy to see the latest trend or to see the comparison between the two set of data. So let's see how we can create a chart out of our table. So all you need to do is select the entire value for which you need to plot the chart, and then click onto the insert tab under the ribbon, and there you will see something called recommended chart. So under the recommended chart, all the charts that are default and are recommended would be listed, but you can also select the chart from this particular range. But by default, I'm just clicking onto the recommended chart and will select the clustered column, and this will create a chart out of the data that I have selected, where the data would be plotted between the January, February and the sales data for California and Florida. So now let's discuss the different terminologies in this chart. So on the chart, we have the vertical axis as well as the horizontal axis. So the chart is plotted between the vertical and the horizontal axis, and the area on which the whole chart is plotted is called the plot area, where the lines representing each of the values are called as grid lines, where each grid line representing a set of value over the y-axis or over the vertical axis. So the data that is plotted on the plot area or on the chart is called as legend. So here the data for the California and Florida is plotted. So California and Florida is the legend in this chart. So now let's see how we can move the embedded chart. So just place your mouse on the chart area of the chart. This is the white area within the parameter. You have to hold down the mouse button and you can drag the chart to the place of your choice. So now you can see I can place it anywhere on the sheet, and then we can resize also. So as you can see that it's just occupying all of the space. So I can resize also. So select the chart. You know that chart is selected because it has the handlers around the parameter. Place the mouse on the handlers and until your mouse turns into dual headed arrow, and then you have to just scroll it a bit and drag it to your desired location. So in this way you can move the embedded chart and can resize the embedded chart. I can able to see the table as well as the plotted chart on the same sheet. So this was the recommended chart that I have selected by default. You can change the chart type as well. Just select the chart, go to the insert tab. Under the insert tab, go to the recommended chart, and from the recommended chart you can select any of the chart of your choice. Now let's suppose I'll select the 100% stacked column, and you can see now my chart is converted to stacked column chart. Or you can even go to the 3D selection. We can select from here. I'll go to the 3D column, select the 3D column here, and my chart is now converted to 3D column chart, 3D clustered column chart. So in this way you can change the chart type. I will again select the recommended chart as the clustered column, and this is the clustered column chart. So you can also change the way the data is displayed. So as you can see that the chart is plotted where the x-axis is the January, February and March. I don't want my x-axis to be in the terms of month. I want the x-axis and y-axis, or the vertical axis or the horizontal axis, to be switched. So all I need to do is I'll select the chart, and once I select the chart, I'll go to the chart design, and under the chart design there is an option to switch row and column. I'll click on to switch row and column, and once I select row and switch row and column, you can see that now my row and column is switched. So switch row and column, and now you can see that now my legend are January, February and March, and the data is plotted for January, February and March for these two cities, that is California and Florida, against the numbers, the sales numbers. So in this way you can switch the row column, or basically the legend with the value that is plotted. So I will again switch it back, and now you can move the legend also. So how to move the legend? Just select the chart, go to the chart design section. Under the chart design section you will see something called add chart element. Under the add chart element you will see a legend option, and under the legend option you can see that the legend is in the bottom. I can choose like right, so the legend will move to the right. So in this way you can move the legend to right side, left side, up, down. So it will depend upon how you want your chart to be displayed. So similarly you can edit the chart title as well. So this time the chart title is by default as chart title. Will choose like sales data. So this is my chart type or the title. So if you want to format all the text that is present on the chart, just select the chart and go to the format section, and under format section you can choose the format and you can apply that particular format, and correspondingly the text on your chart will also be displayed as per the selection you make on the format tab. So by default the background for this chart would be white, that is a solid fill. If you want to change that, just double click onto the chart, and on the right side a format chart area will be opened up. Just go to the fill option, and under the fill option it will be selected as automatic or solid fill. If you click on no fill, so there will be no background. So there is an option called picture or texture fill. If you select that, then a texture would be at the background of your chart. You can insert the picture of your choice. Just click onto the insert, and it will ask you to select the desirable picture to make it the background for your chart. So in this way you can format the chart area as well. So by default I'll select the solid fill. If you want to do some more formatting, then you can do for shadowing, you can choose for glow, you can choose for soft edges or 3D format. You can also resize your chart, or manually also you can resize your chart. So in this way you can represent your table data in the form of charts for great visualization. So in this video, let's talk about the different type of charts in Excel. We will see each chart by considering the sample example on the screen where we have a sales data table. The sales data table is covering the month-wise collection for two cities, that is California and Florida. So let's get started. So there are different type of charts in Excel with different usages. So let's see all the different type of charts with example. First being the area chart, which displays value over a period of time and emphasis on the amount of change. So it will be showing you the change in the data over a period of time. Let's see how. We will again consider the sales data table. I will select the entire table and then under the insert tab, so I will select the area chart and there are option called 2D area or the 3D area. I will just select the 2D area. So you under 2D area also we have the area chart, we have this stacked area chart and we have 100% stacked area. I will just select the area chart and you can now see, I will just make it small and will drag it properly and you can see that it is actually plotting the area for Florida and you can see that it is displaying the value over period of time and it is emphasizing on the amount of data change. So here we have some data and the data change is happening also and there is a sudden spike in the data change and you can display the values over the period of time also. So at this particular time period you have some value, at this particular time period you have another value and the whole chart is in the area form. So here I will select another area chart and this time I will select the stacked area chart and now you can see I have selected the stacked area chart where both the charts are stacked onto each other and this time you can see with the blue pattern the California area is plotted and with the orange the data for the Florida is plotted in terms of area. Next chart type is the bar chart type, which displays the value for comparison, and similarly we have the column chart type also, which also displays the value for comparison. These are the normal chart type that normally one create for their own references. So let's see what bar and column represents. So if I select here the chart and go to the change chart type under chart design tab and here I will select the column chart type. So here you have 2D column, I'll select any one, 2D column, 3D column, 2D bar, 3D bar. I'll just select the normal 2D column over here and this time you can see that it is displaying value for comparison, the comparison between California and Florida. So you can see the comparison value for the month of January, for the month of February and for the month of March. So similarly you have the bar also. I'll go to the change type under the same column. I will select 2D bar and if I select this bar also, so this is not the column chart, this is the bar chart and the bar chart also, this is displaying the comparison value for the month of March, February or January for Florida and California. So next chart type is the line chart type where it shows the trend over time. It doesn't show the comparison value, it doesn't show the area, it just show the trends over time, that at what time the data is changing. So I'll select again, go to the chart design tab and under the change chart type we have line and there we have 2D line, 3D line and all. So I'll just select any of the value. I'll select line with markers. So you can see it is just showing you the trend over time, that at what point the values are getting changed. So it is just giving you the trend with respect to the time for the month of January, February and March, and the data is for the California and Florida. Next chart type we will discuss is the pie chart type. So which display only one data series. Each pie represents a percentage of a whole. So let's consider the whole circle is 100%. We have a pie and each pie will be percentage of that whole circle, with each pie will be representing as a percentage of the value from that whole circle. So let's see how this pie chart can be implemented. I'll again select the chart. I will go to the change chart type and under the pie select any pie. I'll select the 2D pie over here. So you can see I have selected the 2D pie, which is just representing the value for January, February and March. And as I discussed previously that it will display just one data series. So this time it has selected the California data series and not the Florida one. And this time you can see that this is my entire circle where each pie is representing the percentage of the entire circle, where you can see the 14% of this pie is represented by the January month, we have the 29% of the value or of the total is represented by the February month, and the majority 57% value is represented by the March value in this pie chart. So in this way, each piece of a pie is a percentage of a whole circle. Next, we have a donut, which is also similar to pi, except it can display more than one data series. So in the pi, we can only show one data series, where we have seen that we have selected value for California and Florida, but it just show me California value. Where in the donut, it will be similar to the pi, but it will display more than one data series. Let's see how. Let's change the chart type to donut, and there down you can see under the same pie section you can see something called donut, the option for donut. Click on to donut, and this time you can see that there are two circles, inner circle and outer circle. So if I hover over it, the inner circle is represented by California value, and the outer circle, the series, is for the Florida. And again, since donut chart is also a pie chart, so each pie is the percentage of the total value, or the total circle, or the 100%. So next chart type is the radar chart type, which displays the change of data relative to the center point and also to each other. So there will be a center point value. It will just display the change of data with respect to a time with the center value and also to each other. So let's see how. So select the chart, and under the chart type, go to the waterfall section. And under the waterfall section, you will see, if you scroll down, you will see an option for radar. Select any of the radar type chart. I'll select the first one, and you can see it is just comparing the value with the center value and with each other. So it will be just creating a radar kind of a structure, where the orange is representing by the Florida and this blue is represented by the California value. And if you go to each point will be showing its own value. So next is XY chart type, which is used to display the relationship between numeric values in several data series. So let's see how. I will again select this chart. I'll change the chart type as XY scatter. And now you will see that my data is scattered over this particular chart area, where each data point is represented as a numeric values in several data series. So we have two data series, one is for California and another one is for Florida, and it is just giving me the numeric value. So you can see this is the 70,000 for Florida. This value is for like 30,000 for California, and it is just giving the relationship between the numeric values. So next is the bubble chart type. It is just used to plot and coordinate values. It is very simple chart type. Let's see how it is plotting and coordinating the values. I'll select the chart, and under the change chart type, again I'll go to the XY scatter, and there down you will see the bubble chart type. Click onto the bubble. It will create a bubble of your value. So here you can see the series is for Florida, point is January, and value is 1,70,000. One is representing the first value, then we have the second value, third value, fourth value. So you can consider it as the January, February, and March values, and it is just plotting and just coordinating the values. It is just very simple, just like XY scatter. So these were the important chart types in Excel, where area, bar, column, line, pie charts are very much important chart types. And depending upon how you want your data, the table data, to be visualized in terms of the chart, you can choose any of the chart type available from the Excel. So this is it from the chart type section. Pie charts basically displays only one data series, and each piece of a pie is a percentage of a whole number or a whole circle. So let's consider the whole circle is of 100%. A pie will be the percentage of that whole circle. It could be 14%, 50%, depending upon what value that pie is containing. So what value that pie is with respect to the whole of the circle. So pie charts can present the relationship of different classes of data in a visually simple way. So let's see with this simple example. We have the sales data table, where we have the monthly data collection for two cities, that is California and Florida. And let's create the pie chart out of it. I'll select the entire table and will go to the insert tab, and under insert tab I will see an option for pie. So I'll select the 2D pie, the first chart, that is the pie 1, and you can see the pie chart is created. I will make it bit small and will drag it next to my data table. So on the screen, you can see a pie chart. And as I have already discussed, that pie chart displays only one data series. So currently we have selected California and Florida, but it is showing just the data for California. So it will just display one data series at a time, and each pie will be a percentage of the whole. So considering the entire circle 100%, so each pie will be some percentage of that complete 100%. So you can see that the blue color is for the January month, which is 14% of the entire circle. The gray is for the March month value, which is 57% in this entire circle. So the share for the March, or rather we can say that the area or the percentage for this pie for March is 57% of the entire value. Now on the screen, if you hover over to each of the pie, you will see the values. But you can set the values into each pie. How? Just select the chart. Under the chart design tab, you will see an option to add chart element. We will add the chart element as chart label and just select inside end. If you select inside end, so the value for each pie will be displayed on the top of the pie. So you can edit it to put the chart values outside end or to put the chart values best fit. So in this way we can add the data labels to our pie chart. So this was the value element for the California for each of the pie. If you want to put any other value, just double click onto this value and a format data label will be opened up, and on the data label option you will see different fields. So by default the value section is selected. Just select the percentage and remove this value section, and you can see that 14%, 29%, 57%. Data label now is in terms of percentage and not in terms of values. You can even put the category name. So you can see that since the data is for the January, February and March month, now the category name is also being represented or being printed on top of your chart. So this was the 2D representation. We can also create a 3D representation. So just select the already created pie chart, and under the chart design you will see an option to change the chart type. Go to the pie section and under that select the 3D pie. So you can now see that this chart is now the 3D chart. If you double click the chart, just come on to the effects section under the format data series. There you can change the transparency, size, label, blur. In this way you can change the effects for your 3D chart. If you want your customer to focus on a particular pie, you can explode that particular pie from your entire section. How? Just click your mouse and drag it out from your entire circle, and you can see that this particular pie for January month is now exploded out from this entire circle. So in this way it is clearly visible and customer will focus it more clearly. So you can rotate your chart to give a better perspective of your chart viewing. Just double click onto your chart and under the data format data points, just set the angle for your first slice, and in this way you can rotate your chart and can give a better perspective of chart viewing. So this was all about pie chart. So in this video, let's learn how to convert a number into text or word in Excel. So for your information, Excel doesn't support number to word or text conversion. As you can see from their official documentation that says Excel doesn't have a default function that displays number as English word in worksheet. But we have to convert it into words for our usage. The simple thing is we have to make use of VB script, and we have to write a script in order to convert this, or we have to write a function that we can use in our sheet in order to convert our currency or any number into text format. So how we can achieve this? So we will take the sample example where we have taken the number as 22.30, which is dollars, and it will be converted into text. So we'll go to the official documentation where they also says that they will be creating a function called spell number, and that function or a code they'll be writing in VB script. So don't worry if you are new to VB script, you don't know the coding and still want to convert or still want to use this conversion. Under Microsoft page, this page, they have given the sample script. All you need to do is just copy this particular script and you need to go to the VB script and paste this. Once you paste, the function spell number will be available for you to use. So now we'll see how we can use or how we can create the spell number under VBA. So I have already copied whole of this function under Sublime Text, or you can take Notepad, anything, or you can directly copy from there also. So I have copied here. Now what I'll do is I'll go to the developer option on the screen. On the top, you can see there is a developer option. If you are not able to see this developer option, don't worry. So all you need to do is just go to the preferences And under preferences, there will be something called ribbon and toolbar. This is for Mac. If you're using Windows, you will be able to see under home also, or under the Excel button on the top if you're using the window. So there under the customize the ribbon, you will see a developer option. So by default, I have selected. That's the reason the developer option is coming under my ribbon. If you unselect, this developer option will go off. So by default, the developer option will not be available on your ribbon. So you need to select and save. So once you save it, the developer option will come for you to use. Now we'll be clicking onto this developer option. So once you click onto this developer option, there will be an option called Visual Basic. Click onto the Visual Basic and this Visual Basic will open up. The Microsoft Visual Basic will open up. Here we will be writing or we'll be pasting our code. Since this is the Visual Basic, we need to create a module, the VBA module under which we need to paste the script. So select Microsoft Excel objects, just right click and there click on to insert and then module. Since we are creating the VBA module, under this VBA module, just directly paste the entire function. And you can see I have pasted the entire function over here. Now just save this function. Once you save this function, just come back to your sheet and now write anything like 32.40. And now I want to convert this. Just type equals spell number. And you can see that the spell number is now available for me to use. Select the cell, hit enter, and you can see $32.40. Similarly, we'll take another example, 14 point, let's say 89. And now we will just drag this formula and you can see $14.89. So in this way, you can convert number into text. Now, this is for dollars and cents. Suppose you are from another country where the conversion or the currency is in different format. Let's say if we are from India and we are using rupees. So what we need to do is just directly go to this same script, and under the same script, all we need to do is we need to replace this dollars and cents into the corresponding currencies, country currencies. So I will just replace and I'll replace dollars to rupees, replace all, and then again I'll replace dollar to rupee, replace, and there is something called cents, but I'm not changing the cents. Let it be like that because we are just working on example. If you're working on real time, just convert cents to paisa also. And now again I'll go here, I'll copy the changed script and again go to the Visual Basic, select entire script, delete, and paste this new script and then save. Again go back, and this time you will see it is converted to 14 rupees and 89 cents. Cents we have not converted, otherwise it would be paisa. So in this way you can easily convert numbers into text for your currency. The script is given under this link. I'll paste this link in the description box. Please do check it out. If you have any concern or questions, please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching, guys.